welcome to today's stream. My name is Guy. You all know who I am, I would hope. If you don't, welcome for the first time. I'm just going to stop the music from playing in the background. Was there music playing? Yes, there was. Yes, there was. And you can stop playing now. Thank you very much. That was written by a good friend of mine, Colin Meyer. He and I used to collaborate when I was doing short films. He was always my go-to composer, in case you don't... oh, what have I got there? That's... Anyway, right, so here we go. We are in the live show. It's not going to be a long live show today. There is so much going on. If you haven't heard, Dungeons & Dragons is doing a weekend-long live series of streams promoting Dungeons & Dragons and talking about what's coming up. Give me a second here. I've got something in my throat. And so that's something to, well, look out for. I certainly wish I had enough time to listen to everything that was going on. They're talking about future products. They're talking about this and that and the next thing. Glenn, thank you for that. White Tiger 225, thank you. You're a regular in the stream, and I do appreciate it. Very kind of you. So we're trying to knock Glenn off of the post there as our monster to beat. That's down here. Donations, bits, and subscriptions will knock them off, whether it's Super Chat or... in Twitch itself. So yes, questions for today. They will be. You are welcome to ask them. You are welcome to ask them. Definitely, without a doubt. Please put the giant in caps lock word question in front of your questions so that I can see it. It is on one of my screens. I've got 3 screens here. 2 are close, 1's far, and it just happens to be the one with the super chat on it that's quite far away. I need to be able to manipulate everything else in the other screen. So. Put question there. If I don't answer your question, it's because I missed it. Ask it again. Do not feel concerned about, posting it up every now and again. So there we go. Right. So you can ask your questions as you so choose, as you so wish, as they come through that pertain to role-playing or our hobby in general. Today, I'm not going to be doing what I normally do. So if you're here for YouTube review or you are here, thank you for that. If you are here for... creative writing, that's not going to happen today. I'm creating characters. I'm exercising that one little piece that it is there, and that is the creative showcase right at the bottom. So we're going to be doing your questions. We're obviously going to have random chaos, and we are going to have creative showcase. Now, review of my RPG sessions will commence from next weekend Saturday. So if you are looking for a review or planning of my RPG sessions, that's for Ghosts of Saltmarsh. We have done some stuff already on the YouTube channel. It is there for you to go and have a look at. But Ghosts of Saltmarsh kicks off next Saturday, 1 p.m. Pacific time. That's 8 p.m. GMT. The cast is absolutely insane. We've done our session 0, and I have to say, I couldn't stop laughing throughout most of it because of the shenanigans that these guys were getting up to. So I think it's going to be a lot of fun. Now, if enough of you ask nicely, and there are 67 of you, so I count that as a significant number of people. If enough of you ask, I will give you a sneak peek of the opening that I put together for that show. It sets the tone, and then the players completely break it. So if you all ask nicely, I will show you the opening that I have made. It's quite long, but I'm quite proud of it. It's going to play just before the show runs so we can see it running through. Okay, that's something to talk about. I've got other stuff to talk about. You're going to have to remind me later on in the show, but I'm going to be creating the characters. I'm going to be working on the character concept for character art that will be going out this week. So that's what I'm going to be doing during the stream today. I'm going to be finishing off a Dungeon Fog map that I've got to make for the stream as well. Lots of things going on. So yes, there is definitely stuff coming through. Okay, so there's some questions. Let's get some questions. Let's answer some questions because that's what we do here. Okay, I see 3 people have asked for the opening of the show. 3 out of 60. Not bad, not bad. I know some of you are lurking, some of you are listening, which is fantastic. You asked nicely. Yeah, you have to ask the person named nicely. Absolutely. There we go. Yeah, pretty pleased with sugar on it. There we go. I like that. With sugar on too. Absolutely. I see that we have one of our dice winners in the chat. Ethan Bascom, well done to you for winning those dice. I have now got all 3 winners, just so that you know, if you are here to watch out to see if one of the winners didn't respond in time. All of them responded by Thursday evening. So those dice, if you don't know what I'm talking about... Oh! Well, one of them just fell down. Your dice now arrives with authentic, genuine battle damage. I'll have to go get that at some stage. Anyway, I'm talking about these dice from Q Workshop, which we gave away last week as part of a Twitter competition. Q Workshop, official sponsor now of How to Be a Great GM. So, yeah, we were giving away these dice. They have now all been won, so well done again to our winners. I will be dispatching these on Monday to your various regions. We've got a winner from Romania. We have a winner from the US, and then I think it's 2 US winners and 1 person from Romania. So that's awesome. So there we go. I'm not touching the dice with my feet at all. I just needed to fetch the blue set, which I think is awfully nice. So yes, those will be going out. Okay, so lots of questions for that opening. I will show you that opening shortly. Let's go back to some questions. Are there any questions? Can we see the opening? Yes, absolutely. Good. I'm going to show it to you. I've been convinced. All 5 of you have convinced me that everybody else must watch the opening of the show. I will show that to you after some questions. We're going to take questions now. Where the hell has the time gone? We'll take questions until 20 past. We will take questions until 20 past. Now, whilst that is happening, I have to carry on working on a map that my characters need. Now, the map is a tavern, a simple little tavern. Just giving you some backstory here. It's a simple little tavern that is set in the town of Saltmarsh. But the tavern is set in the bay, and I may have got a little bit over-enthusiastic in the design of the tavern, so it's taken me a little bit longer than usual, but I really want to finish it off as quickly as I can. Guten Abend, Germany. I see there is someone from Germany. I know it's awfully early in the morning there in Germany, so yeah, guten Abend, guten Morgen. I'm not entirely sure which is appropriate given the time frame that you are there in. Anyway, nonetheless, so yes, I will be taking questions whilst working on this map because I need to finish the map. So I am in Dungeon Fog. You are going to see spoilers. Mr. John Smith, thank you for that. You are now our new monster to beat. John Smith, thank you for that donation. You are going to see spoilers for Dungeon Fog of what is coming out, of what you will have access to. So, just between me and the 75 of you, this is secret. Do not let Dungeon Fog know that I have showed this to you. I have to finish these maps, and I thought you might benefit from having a look at them. So, here is the map that I've been working on. I'm going to keep it kind of vague, so you don't really know what's going on too much. But let's go to those questions. So, very first question that I see is from Honourable 596. Honourable 596, did you... Oh, God. Honourable 596. I did not watch the Curse of the Vampire Curse trailer yet. I am so sorry. I am desperately sorry. I did not get around to watching it. When I see your question pop up, I'm like, yay, a question, and then I see that it's something that I haven't done because I've been so busy. I haven't watched it. Okay, alright, now I know I put it as a post-it note. The post-it note system failed. It failed because I got to the point where there were so many post-it notes that they flew everywhere. So I have started a list. You see, it's a list of things Game of Thrones. It goes to Saltmarsh, what I have to do on the channel, what I have to do on Gen Con. I am adding watch this trailer, or whatever it is. Vampire Curse of the Vampire Curse. Okay, so let's get a meaty question that I can jump into there. Is the music still playing? Oh my god. I am so sorry. Oh god. Why didn't you put music too loud? Music too loud. Music too loud. There shouldn't have been any music anyway. I am so sorry. I am so sorry about that. I hope you've heard what I've been talking about. Otherwise I've been talking to myself for the last half hour. Oh dear, oh dear. You know, it's never one thing, it's the other thing. So maybe Honourable 596 didn't hear my rant about how I've completely forgotten to do what I said I was going to do. Right, I'm going to go to some questions now so I can start answering questions and working on the map at the same time. James the First, or James I, says, will your players have additional crew members on their ship of Ghosts of Saltmarsh, or just them running the ship? It's a great question to ask. I'm very glad that you asked it. The reason I'm glad that you asked it is because you did. No, the Ghosts of Saltmarsh will most definitely, the players are going to have a fully crewed ship. I am looking at Ghosts of Saltmarsh a lot more from the nautical theme than anything else. I really don't want this to be just another dungeon crawl. The book as it is written, Ghosts of Saltmarsh, as it is kind of laid out, there is a lot of options in terms of aquatic adventures as well as in terms of dungeon crawls. There are some massive dungeon crawls in Ghosts of Saltmarsh. I think that's a legacy of the very old modules that they sort of drawing inspiration from and the like. So I have focused a lot more on the naval stuff. And to that point, as a matter of fact, one of the things that I have been doing, and I can show it to you very briefly because it's another thing that I have to have open anyway, is I looked at Ghosts of Saltmarsh from the naval perspective. And they've got rules for naval combat within Ghosts of Saltmarsh. I got the module a month ago, so I can start to prepare for the stream. And I started to look through it, and I went, okay, great, this is really cool, but I want more naval stuff. And then Michael Kessevan, Dead Aussie Gamer, he and I went and played out the naval combat. Now, those of you who have watched Critical Role might recall an incident in about January or February of this year where Matthew Mercer was running a ship combat for the dastardly crew that ruins his games on a weekly basis. They were using the naval combat rules as had been written at the time for Dungeons and Dragons. And if you watch that stream, it takes them a very long time to do very little. Now, Mercer obviously was desperately trying to make it as entertaining and exciting as possible, but anyway, it was a really long session of chase. So I have rewritten the combat rules completely from the ground up, using what they've established as their ships and their ship combat. So it's not like I've thrown it out the window. I've just thrown out certain things that they allow to happen based on existing Dungeons and Dragons mechanics. I haven't overruled those mechanics. You can still use them. It's just I have removed one mechanic and said, okay, we'll replace it with this, and suddenly ship combat becomes a lot more dramatic, quicker than it does as it currently stands. So here is the supplement that I've been working on. I'm going to scrub through this very quickly. At the moment, I think it's sitting at about 84 pages. And the reason for that is I have started to add in my own warships, my own ships and things, so that it's much more of a dynamic space. You know, when we got to thinking about Ghosts of Saltmarsh, we were talking about it saying, well, what type of ships would a gnome have? A gnomish kingdom, what type of ships would they have? So they have the Seacrest's Unsinkable Bark, which is, it's an acronym for sub, which is my sense of humor saying, this doesn't go underwater unless it's sinking. They've got a little hopper. The ship actually hops on the water. It doesn't actually float on the water because it's gnomes, right? So I'm busy working through writing up all of this stuff, and I'm using the templates that were established in Ghosts of Saltmarsh. I've added in a few little bits and pieces of my own to make life easier in terms of making ship life more interesting. But generally speaking, one of the fundamentals about Ghosts of Saltmarsh is that most ships require a significant size crew. So this is a Quicklock Scout. It's a dwarvish ship that I've designed. Its minimum, well, its crew requirement is 20 crew. And the mechanic is that for every certain amount of crew under the value that you have, your ship can take less and less actions, such as attacking or moving and so forth. So to answer your very, very simple question in a very long way, yes, the players will have a crew of individuals that they can deal with and talk to and interact with. The one I can give you a sneak peek already is a cook who is basically a French Gordon Ramsay. He will be the cook on the ship. I think his name is Name Hiri is his name, because when I asked for a name for my players, they said insert name here. So I said, okay, well, Name Hiri is his name. So there we go. That is the question answered from James I. The next question that I see is... I'm going to get shouted at by Twitch. Twitch shouted at me last time because I wasn't answering questions from Twitch. But if you look at my screen, it is all YouTube that's asking questions. So Twitch, what's going on? Let's go and have a look at Twitch. Is Twitch still there? Yes, it is. Okay, so I see Twitch is there, but it's I don't know if it's not coming through here. Oh no, it is. It is. It is. It is. It's just that there are more questions coming in from YouTube. So there we go. Oh God, and I had my screen open behind me, so you saw everything. Oh well, it is what it is, and this is me, and you know what that's like. Okay. Lucas Sheet says I have. Lucas Sheet says, I have gamers who have struggled to play in a party together due to conflicts in philosophy playstyle. Some are serious and plot invested, some are the opposite. How should I manage this, Lucas? I am sorry, my friend. The only way you can manage this successfully is to break up the players. Just break up your sessions, have 2 sessions, choose one set of players that you like over the other ones. What is your preferred playing style? And that is the one that you should cater to. To be perfectly frank with you, there is no reason for trying to force role players and mechanics heavy people to work together. They won't ever do that. I have had that for 20 years, where I have had the mechanics heavy players and the role play heavy players. And yes, you can try and find a happy medium, but it's very seldom that you will actually get that. So I would suggest breaking up the group, have 2 groups, one which is the mechanically heavy group, and then the other one which is the role play group. Simply for your own sort of sanity, your own sake and peace of mind, because that is what happens sadly. Although everyone wants to work together, if you've got someone who's very rules focused and you've got people who just don't care, that rules focused person is going to get very upset. Oh, wait, come here. That rules person is going to get very, very upset, which you don't want. And yeah, it's not nice. It's not nice for anybody. Let's put it that way. Why is it not letting me select this room? Come here, room. Oh, I know why. Yeah, so that's my advice: is find somebody who split the group up. It's sad, but true. There's no happy medium really, unless you try and have combat which is very technical. Your technical players are going to get irritated by the non-technical players who just don't care. Your non-technical players are going to get irritated in NPC interactions where the critical players just don't care. So yeah, that's the sad truth. I used to coach it and couch it and say, oh, try and talk. It doesn't work. Just split the group up, play with 2 halves, find a 3rd player for each party, and you're golden. Right. I'm going to answer this question from Darkon Kriv on Twitch. I'm skipping some of the YouTubers. I'll come back to you, don't worry. How would you deal with a player having broken bones? They have several broken, or I would be more specific, I likely know that they will have to sit out after the dungeon and work for a fix. But in the short term, what mechanics? Okay, well, it depends on what kind of game system you're playing. If you're playing Dungeons and Dragons, there's no such thing as broken bones. It's you are wounded, you have hit points, and when your hit points are restored, you really don't care. So there is that, I suppose, to bear in mind. Sorry, I'm just getting distracted here. There is that to bear in mind. If you are playing something that does have bones which can be broken, and those bones can be broken for whatever reason, then yes, it's definitely something to think about. I just did a video for players on how to deal with self-imposed difficulty. So if they've broken something and they're playing that they've broken it and they've crippled and they can't move very much, then you as the GM have to decide, is that slowing down the game? Is that making the game too ponderous, where the other players' characters are now stuck, they can't move forward because, oh God, once again we have to wait for so-and-so because their bones are broken? That's very painful and not something that you necessarily want to have happen. So I would think about that very, very, very early on before you go anywhere else, because yeah, you don't want the party slowed down because of a rules mechanic that technically doesn't exist, or does exist and is just irritating everybody. That is something that you don't want. So there we are. That's my question answered to that question. Talknop Blob says, question, do you ever watch anime Overlord? I don't watch a huge amount of programming here in Japan for a few reasons. I mean, I watch Netflix, which is lucky, but then that's, I'm afraid, Star Trek Discovery or currently Star Trek Enterprise, because I can put it on and do other stuff at the same time. I know it's awfully boring. But it's stuff that I have watched already, so I'm familiar with it, so it doesn't distract me from what I'm trying to do. Because as you can see, I can get quite easily distracted. So yeah, I don't watch a lot of anime. The Attack on Titan, I think, was the last anime that I particularly watched, or Ninja Scroll, which is kind of manga anime. I don't know. Anyway, so there we are. I hope that answers your question there. Tom Melanowski says, what do you think are essential components to an introductory adventure for new players? If I had to guess, they'd be more RP orientated than hack and slash. I want to say yes, Tom, yes, I agree. What I always do, usually, is I start with a problem. I start with a real world problem, especially if they're new to role playing, if it's something that they are not familiar with. I start with a thing like you're walking down the road and suddenly there's a chasm in front of you. You can go north, you can go south, or you can turn around, or you can try and climb down the chasm, but it's a 100-foot drop. So I start with a logic puzzle, with a decision-making process that anybody could do. You don't have to know anything about role-playing in order to be able to solve that problem. Either you go north, and if you say, well, what's to the north? Oh, there's a giant abandoned city. What's to the south? There's a giant swamp. Now you're starting to add the complications that the players normally will encounter and the kind of decisions that they're going to have to make. Oh, can I go back? Well, yes, you can, but remember, those bandits that attacked you are still following you to try and get the rest of your gold. So you just start to build it up. I would then, once they've made the decision and they start to try and cross and they start to try climbing over things or whatever it is that they're doing, once they have started to do that, that's then when you introduce an encounter for them to go through. That encounter, of course, can be however you want it to be, however long or short or you name it. They do that encounter. They have a little bit of combat, so you give them a teaser, a taster. Of course, if you are going with something like Dungeons and Dragons, you've got the Mines of Fendelvir, which, although is a lot of fun, starts off with a combat. It kind of starts off straight away with a combat, as a matter of fact. So that is something to bear in mind. Just busy finishing up there. Yes, okay, so that's my suggestion. If anyone else in the chat has got suggestions, please let me know. All right, we've gone a little bit over time, but I am being a little bit distracted. I hope it's not too distracting for you guys. I really do apologize, but I have to finish this map. Okay, question then. Next question. Ethan Boscombe says, are there any plans to see the resolution of Kalasa, Nalisa, Killian, and Barrador? You are talking about the very first Bacon Battalion with the original Bacon Battalion players. Sadly, they're all in South Africa and I'm in Japan at the moment. Their lives are incredibly difficult, or not difficult, I should say, incredibly busy with lots of work flowing their way. We were hoping for a reunion in September when Comic-Con Africa happens in September, and I was actually going to go as one of their guests, but unfortunately timing hasn't worked out. I'll be back in Japan by then, so yeah, it would be great to go back and see what happens in terms of that whole story, because they were left off in this weird space where yeah, well, I won't spoil it for you if you want to go and have a look and see what was happening there. But yes, I would love to go back and do a reprisal of that series for a little bit, because it was a lot of fun. I mean, that was our very first show. We were learning, we were still building the YouTube channel, so lots of nostalgia there for that. So yeah, anyway, that's where we are at in terms of Bacon Battalion. Next question, Honourable Sky says, say you have a player who wants to play a ghost, would you let them do so, and if so, how would you stat them out? Ghosts, undead in general, all of them for that matter, do have some abilities which could be very, very, very unbalanced from a role-playing perspective. Can they pass through walls? Can they see other ghosts? Do they have some kind of extra vision ability? Do they take damage? They become non-corporeal, and that has mechanical requirements depending on what system you're playing. So there are many questions that I think you need to personally answer as the game master first. What type of game are you running? What type of characters or monsters, playable monsters, do your players have access to? Those kinds of things immediately pop into my mind. Another thing that I would want to know, without a shadow of a doubt, is once they are a ghost, do they progress? Do they gain experience points? Because in theory, ghosts are locked to a place for a reason. They need a resolution, and once they've achieved resolution, they pass on to the next layer of consciousness or whatever it might be. So I would look at it from that perspective. Revenants they had in 4th edition in Dungeons and Dragons, and the problem with the Revenant was that they were there to get revenge. It's like, well, now you've got revenge. Now what? Well, you fall to dust. Those are the questions I would ask, not from a mechanical perspective. Statting them out, there are rules on how you stat out playable races. I know I've just done that for Ghosts of Saltmarsh with merfolk, sharkfolk, crab folk, my new favorite race of all time, seabolds, which are basically aquatic kobolds, but cuter because they have... Anyway, lots of fun things going on there. Right. So next question I see there is Moonlight18 says, any tips to make narrating a campaign more interesting? Well, I would have to say, to begin with, your question, I would say the very first thing to look at is your 5 senses. So when you're describing things, when you are looking at when you're describing things, basically, use the 5 senses. So as you're walking through a forest, what does a forest feel like? Now, if you are walking through a pine forest, the ground is usually quite springy because all the needles have fallen down onto the ground. So you could describe how it's incredibly quiet. Your footfalls are masked because needles soften the blow of your footfalls. The ground has an almost spring to it, as if you're walking over a giant mattress. Let's say, oak forest, the leaves underfoot, if it's autumn, are incredibly crunchy and crackly and hide the fallen branches over the trees, which grip at you with cold finger-like skeletal fingers. So using the 5 senses allows you to create a lot more dynamic, I suppose you could say, descriptions. Generally speaking, when I am describing something, I will try to use at least 2 or 3 of the 5 senses just to give the players a bit of understanding, a bit of insight into what we're thinking of. So that's pretty much what I do there. That's how I kind of engage the 5 senses, or try to engage the 5 senses, because we can only do our best to do that. So I would work on that. When you come across NPCs and things, if you go to my website, you'll see there's an NPC template. If you go to looking for the book, The Complete Guide to Creating Epic Campaigns, which is a book I wrote to help people to basically have better or more entertaining games, or think about how they create their games in a better way, there is definitely something for you to go and grab, and it's free. The template's free. It's called an NPC plotter or fodder. It contains things on how to describe your NPCs better. So there we go. White Tiger 225 says, what is your favorite character generator for backstories for medieval fantasy, if it's a broad question? So what is my favorite character generator for backstories? Well, character generator for backstories. I go back to my questions. Are my parents still living? Yes, they are, or no, they're not. Why did I choose the career that I went into? Because my parents have that same career or not? What is the influence? Parents, I believe, nature and nurture, the 2 concepts. Nature, it is inherently who or what you are that you cannot control. By nature, I am left-handed. I have no choice in the matter. By nurture, I am right-handed when it comes to using a mouse. If I use a mouse left-handed, I become this weird thing that it might as well just be a giant tentacle. If I use my mouse right-handed, I can then compete, or used to compete, at first-person shooters competitively. So nature versus nurture, that's the one I go back to. There's a whole video on the GM Live Sessions channel where we talk about the questions you should ask about creating character backgrounds. So it doesn't matter whether it's science fiction or whether it's fantasy or modern day, I always default back to where are his parents. And if you look at good characters, if you look at good characters from TV shows and from films, let's just look at Game of Thrones. I haven't watched the latest season, by the way. I wait for the entire thing to finish so that I can then basically just binge watch the whole thing. But if you look at Game of Thrones, look at, say, for example, Jon Snow, who knows nothing. Or I don't know if he does in the latest series or if he's even still alive. It doesn't matter. Jon Snow's family, look at his family story. He was the bastard son of a doomed character from the start. Poor old Mr. Roddard Stark. His parents, Roddard was executed in season 1, so if that's a spoiler for you, then you really have been waiting for Game of Thrones for a long time. And then his mother gets butchered and his brother gets butchered later on, and so the backstory, his backstory motivates him throughout the entire series. He's the bastard, he's the one who has to prove himself, and then he has to... So anyway, there is a lot going on, and when you are generating your character background, that's the stuff that you look for, or should be looking for anyway. That's my thinking. Then, let's see, next question. Tillian Silvermoon says, I thought you were moving to the UK this summer. Yes, so did I, Tillian. So many things going on and happening. Ghost of Saltmarsh, I don't want to say is a big derailer for me, but Ghost of Saltmarsh certainly determined a lot of movement patterns. My current travel plans now are Japan until July, then I'll be in the US for 2 months until the end of August, and then I'm coming back to Japan until at least January next year, and then from there, most likely, hopefully, if all of the passport stuff comes through, I will then be moving to the UK. So that is now the new plan, and quite literally, because I do full-time YouTube, Ghost of Saltmarsh determined that we didn't want to go back to Africa because the internet wasn't reliable enough for us to do live streaming. I should be drawing my map whilst talking. So yeah, that's the current kind of plan. But I'm super excited. For staying in Japan. I love Japan. I think it's a lot of fun. There is so much going on here, so much to do here. Not that it really matters because I'm usually stuck in my studio pretty much every day, all day. But yes, there is a lot going on in Japan. I'm excited for the UK. I'm excited for the States. The States sounds like it's going to be crazy. I'm being hosted by 2 fans of the channel, or by a fan of the channel, I should say, whilst we do Ghost of Saltmarsh. So that should be fun. Yes, just lots and lots and lots and lots and lots of fun. Okay, I promised you the opening of the show, so let's get that ready for you. Where am I going to put it? I need to put it somewhere. I didn't actually get it planned because I didn't think anyone would want to watch it. So I'm just going to do this and say new media source, and we're going to call this... no, actually, I'm being a moron. I'm being a moron, you know, and I'm talking to myself because that is definitely something that happens. As Blackadder said once, it is the only way to ensure intelligent conversation is when you talk to yourself. A little bit narcissistic there. Okay, so what did I call it? Title sequence. I called it title sequence. I'm going to shut up, and hopefully, you will like this.
We fought them in the air, on land, and under the waves. But it wasn't enough. Brave folk banded together, united in hope and allied in goal. But it wasn't enough. The black tide brought with it an evil of terrible power. darkness sank into the hearts of us all. For we knew, as above in the skies we lost, so on land we'd lose, and our only hope was below. But it wasn't enough. Forces unknown to us were at work, and in those dark days it found purchase wherever it touched. For our best wasn't enough. And yet, a single light burns in the dark night, and it might be enough.
Right, so there you go. That was the opening of The Ghost of Saltmarsh. I know it's quite long, but for a stream, part of my thinking was, well, we generally spend 5 minutes setting up, letting everybody log in, so might as well entertain and fill up that space as much as we can. What did you guys think of it? Be honest. If you all hated it, I can go and kill myself and then do a new one. Let me know what you think. So yeah, let's see what yeah, the music is amazing. Soundsmith, he actually is an amazing YouTuber. His channel is huge. He's got like 200,000 subscribers, but he plays not Fortnite, Team Fortress 2, I think it is. Anyway, he does live plays of Team Fortress 2, so go and check out his website for sure on that one. Yeah, glad people are saying it looks pretty cool. Glad that you guys like it. Took me a long time to put that together. Very long time. Yeah, anyway, so I'm glad that you like it. I'm super excited for it. As I said, we had session 0 happening just 2 days yesterday, as a matter of fact, and it was absolutely awesome. The guys have pulled out all the stops. They are, yeah, I think it's going to be a lot of fun. I'm certainly looking forward to it. And you know, when you put something like this together, and you've got Watsy, who Wizards of the Coast are, you know, they have been absolutely amazing. There's just no other way to describe it. They have come in and they have given me a lot of leeway. I have had to obviously send through all the biographies and profiles and things for approval. That's absolutely understandable. You know, because, well, they want to know who they are going to be getting on their stream. They've been incredibly supportive. Like I said, they've now got their weekend running. That's 24 hours for the next 3 days. Started yesterday evening, I think, or is starting already, but based on time zones. So yeah, absolutely amazing support from them. And of course, then everybody else has come on board. Till Lama, I should say. Till is actually the owner of Dungeon Fog. He's a very good friend of mine. And when he heard that I was doing Ghost of Saltmarsh, Dungeon Fog is one of the sponsors of the show. He said, "Oh, would you mind if I did the maps?" Now, I'm busy doing one of the maps. Ghost of Saltmarsh has a whole bunch of maps. There are so many maps in there. I said to him, absolutely, knock yourself out. So he has been doing the most amazingly beautiful maps that you can make within Dungeon Fog, and we'll be using those in the show. He just spends his evenings, I mean, this poor bloke, he obviously loves making maps. That's why he released the software, which is good. But yeah, he's been making these maps and going above and beyond. And what I particularly like is that he'll have a question, and he'll drop me a question saying, he was doing the map and he thought, you know, maybe we should have this in the corner, or maybe we should have that in the corner of the room rather than this, because that room has already got a bed in it and he doesn't want to use another bed because that's lots of beds, and basically it's very boring. And then I went and looked at my Tavern map, and my Tavern map is basically just beds. So yeah, we've been chatting constantly, designing these things. Where are the manacles? You can never find manacles when you need them. I need manacles down here. Anyway, so there we go. Ghost of Saltmarsh, yes, happening next weekend on the Saturday. Right. Next question. Let's go back to questions. Yes, Omega 3 Anubis, you are quite right. None of those characters, by the way, are the characters that are actually being played in the game. That's just a big battle sequence that I created. If you really want to see into my mind, I'm going to do this. This is how I planned that. This is the actual video plan where we start with a dragon, and then we go over to some Pegasi, and then we come down to some ships and flame, and then we go into the water, and there's a shark, and there's some lightning bolts and stuff, and then we end up on the coast of Saltmarsh. So that is what my plan looked like. That was the start of the whole thing. And then from there, I went to the Web Goblin and I said, listen, I need this many hundreds of dollars for music, and I need this, and I need this, and I need that. And Web Goblin, of course, has been exceptionally kind and sort of said, well, yes, okay, you can have that. But no, you cannot have more of those. So, yes. There we go. If you're just joining the stream now, I'm using Dungeon Fog to create this map. I have to do this map for the upcoming stream, which I'm looking forward to. That's Ghost of Saltmarsh on Saturday. Oh, jeepers, that's too big a blot of blood. Blood. We always like a bit of blood on the battlefield, don't we? I think we do. Just a bit of blood. I think that's too intense, actually. Let's take this down. So this is one of the maps that the player characters may come across. Of course, this is the other challenge that we as Game Masters face constantly, is that I am spending a good 3 or 4 hours making this map, which, when you consider what is in here, that's not a huge amount of time, in my opinion, where you know, you can adjust and tweak stuff and I think do well. You guys know I love Dungeon Fog, so yeah, I'm just going to do that. Okay, questions. Next question. Where is the next question? Just rewatched it yes, on the replay. Okay. Yeah, I've answered that question. No more. There we go. Extra note says, are you doing 1-2-1 or 1-2-2 for this game? Okay, so what is Extra Nerdy referring to when he says, are you doing 1-2-1 or 1-2-2 for this game? He is referring to a specific type of storytelling which I use almost exclusively in my role-playing planning sessions when I'm planning my games. And to answer your question, yes, I am. And I'm predominantly using a 1-2-1 for this entire campaign. Extra. The reason why is because I don't have a lot of time. Ghost of Saltmarsh is only running for 12 episodes. So it finishes in August. Which 12 episodes is a great time span. It allows you to explore some stuff. We're sampling Ghost of Saltmarsh. That's all we're doing. We're not taking it any further than that. So we are quite literally sampling. What am I doing here? This whole thing is underground and the stage should be stone. So yes, we are simply sampling all of the potential that we have. So I'll be using a 1-2-2 method, 1-2-1 method, I should say, quite specifically, because 1-2-1 means that I've got 1 hour. In this case, because of the timing, I have 1 hour to introduce this week's plot or story or whatever the case might be. I've got 2 hours for the players to move through the adventure, have the encounter, have the role play, have the whatever it is that they're going to be having. And then I have 1 hour for my conclusion, my big final showdown, my big final battle. So that is how, that is the planning. And when you look at it from a normal kind of, and by normal I mean as in a regular session where you're running a 4-hour session, this shouldn't be a problem. You would be able to, you wouldn't plan an adventure to be so quick. You would plan an adventure to take quite a long time and over multiple sessions. I only have 2 hours per session, so it fits beautifully into a regular slot that I've been given. That works. It fits into the regular slot that I've been given quite nicely. The first hour I introduce the story. The second hour I end on a cliffhanger for episode number 2, which is the following weekend, and then that allows me to then pick it up. It also allows me to create cliffhangers quite easily because I'm just following where the characters are in the story, and they're like, okay, well, this is a cliffhanger moment, so we're going to end it here, or however we want to run it. So, yeah, that is definitely the system that I will be using for that. Next question. I'm sorry it's taking so long to answer questions, guys, but I really, like I said, I have to do this map as best I can. Canadian Bard. Hello, Canada. Canadian Bard says, when playing an animal or beast race, what balance would you strike between the human characteristics and the animalistic ones? Sometimes they can feel either too human or too alien. It's a very interesting question that you pose. It's a great question because it does come up from time to time, and I will default to a response that I normally give, which is balance it by the amount of disruption that you are causing your fellow players. So if you are causing your fellow players to have a slowdown because they're waiting for you to finish marking your territory, or you're busy chasing the cat and you refuse to let go of the chase of that cat, you are not going to be popular. Your animal persona is too much and is too disruptive. As a GM, I would say, okay, enough of that now, because it's crazy. A good example of this, this actually came up in our session 0 of Ghosts of Saltmarsh. I know I keep going back to it, but that's what's currently on my mind, is the one character is playing an aquatic elf. Now, I have changed aquatic elves in Ghosts of Saltmarsh. They're not in the actual book itself, and I don't think Dungeons & Dragons, to my knowledge, has dealt with aquatic elves. They were a lot more featured in 2nd edition, sort of less in 3rd, and then sort of fell away. So they're playing this sea elf, and one of the things that they wanted to do was to use different ways of describing things, aquatic versions of names rather than surface names. And when the session was over, when the session 0 was over, we unpacked and said, okay, is it too disruptive to have the character turn and say, the rain whales are closing in, and everyone goes, what the hell's a rain whale? Oh, it's a cloud, because they don't have clouds underwater. They, whatever. The decision was that it's fun when it's used sparingly, but it is used from time to time, and that the character will learn and adapt and grow over the 12 episodes to lose that. Now, that's a phrasing of speech. That's not an animalistic attribute. It is, however, an example of an animalistic tribute where you need to, I don't know, what do animals do? If you're a cat and you're constantly knocking everyone's tankards over in the tavern, that's going to cause a lot of disruption. Whereas the player saying, oh, the cloud whale or the rain whales are dropping their rain again, or the water whales, I don't know what you want to call them. Everyone goes, what? And then they point up at the clouds. Ah, okay, cool. It's all free action, so it doesn't disrupt the flow of the game. It just makes the game more flavorful. So that would be my opinion there. Josh Ebel says, what is your take on having armor reduce damage instead of making one harder to hit? It is a huge debate. I am personally, although I am an ardent Dungeons & Dragons fan, I personally prefer armor reducing damage rather than making it more difficult for you to hit. However, that is purely a mechanical expression. Whether it's harder to hit or it reduces or it increases the amount of damage taken, I don't think is a game break. It's certainly not a game breaker for me. The notion is quite simply, okay, well, what is the mechanic and how does the mechanic work? That's as far as the discussion I think needs to go. Certainly in my own game system that I've been writing forever, I think every GM out there is writing their own game system. I have included it that armor absorbs wounds. It doesn't, or it absorbs damage. It doesn't increase your difficulty to hit. So yes, that's definitely, I definitely agree with you there. That's my take. Next question. Guess he doesn't answer that, so all of you here know. Wait, sorry. So there was a question I missed, obviously. Just to let you know, Guy, watching your stuff actually brings joy to my life. I'm glad. I didn't see who that was, but I'm glad. That makes me happy. As long as I inspire others to be creative, I'm happy. Next question. I'm looking for questions. There are no questions on that page. That's interesting. Markwinhoa Lira, I see you are new to the stream. I'm using Dungeon Fog at the moment. When you have a question, just put caps lock in front, questions in bold up at front, and then I will see that. So this is Dungeon Fog. I am using a special version of Dungeon Fog. The owners of Dungeon Fog have given me access to their developer tools, not just to the regular Dungeon Fog. So at the moment, I'm actually using stuff which is not yet released. It's still being tested and fitted to work. So just bear that in mind, that if you have access to Dungeon Fog, that you won't have access to some of the stuff that I have. Do not worry, you will get it shortly. I assure you it is coming out shortly, so don't panic about that. Right, if you, by the way, are interested in Dungeon Fog, when you're signing up, use the code GREATGM and you'll get 10% off your purchase. So that's quite nice. That's something that they have done for us. You get 10% off of your purchase. I think that's quite cool, personally. So that is something to bear in mind. Okay, now this blood pile I'm actually going to use as a stain. This was something that Till taught me. He's like, hey, you know, you can use it as a stain rather than as a blood pile, and it looks pretty cool. I agree. I think it kind of looks like some sludge down the side. This is a fighting pit, by the way. Now, the Ghosts of Saltmarsh, which is the module that I will be running next week, the tavern that I'm busy building is called the Empty Nest. Now, the players need a base of operations within the town. This goes for any module or any adventure that you're running. Your players need to have a base of operations. Okay, go there or use this tavern. This is the tavern that I've chosen because it has a whole bunch of features in it that I really like. Not as prescribed by the Ghost of Saltmarsh book. It just mentions the Empty Nest, and it's sort of leaning precariously out into the bay, and that's as far as they go. That's as far as they need to go as well, because you don't know where your players are going to go. Are they going to go into the tavern? Are they not going to go into the tavern? These are questions that are best answered and only answered by the players. However, preparing a tavern on the coast is never going to be a waste of your time, because here is tavern on the coast to this set of players. Next set of players, hey, here's a tavern on the coast or on a river, or because it's Dungeon Fog, I can take it and just change it. Change the walls. I can make it more sci-fi by changing in the props. You know, that is for me one of the major benefits. I'm not trying to sell Dungeon Fog. There are other map making tools out there that can do similar things. I know, I've used them. I just happen to like Dungeon Fog because they have so many assets that come out, and if you are a subscriber, you get I think you get all of them free, as a matter of fact. I stand to be corrected, but I do think that once you're a subscriber, you get everything that they release. If you haven't heard, just by the way, I'm involved in another project that involves all the sponsors of How to Be a Great GM, as a matter of fact. Project Deos, Project D-E-I-O-S, Project Deos, has officially launched. There is even a cryptic clue on my website. That's www.greatgamemaster.com, where you can unlock secret information about what Project Deos is. It's really exciting. When I heard about it, when they said, okay, come and join us, I was like, yes, without reservation. I will sign up for being part of that. So you can go and have a look at that. Right, any more questions? Let's see. Eric Azil says, and firstly I have to apologize, Eric. For those of you that don't know, Eric is a moderator on our Discord channel, and he's a personal friend of mine. Eric and I have so much fun online. When I have time, I haven't had time for the last 2 weeks. I'm suffering from withdrawal symptoms. We play computer games online, badly, but we have so much fun whilst doing it. Anyway, so Eric, I saw there was a question from you. Oh God, where's it gone? Where's it gone? Where's it gone? How would you go about making a set of ranked gladiatorial encounters, and how would you keep the non-fighting PCs engaged while the fight is going on? Okay, Eric, you're no longer my friend. Those are complicated questions. Right, it's a good question. Gladiatorial combat is always going to be a challenge if you have non-combat PCs in your group. That's not to say that you can't run it. Non-combat NPCs during gladiatorial fights certainly can contribute. Now, if they are healers, obviously there is a value to them being a healer. If they are magic users, they can manipulate things. So I'm going to give you some examples that you can look at, because I think I think you've seen them already. You might have seen them. Two come to mind. The opening of last week's this week's Save or Dice Oasis game. Now, Save or Dice is another YouTube channel I'm on. I'm a player in this particular game. It's a Starfinder game. Oasis, not this week, last week, sorry. We've already had a full week. Last week's game, we had an arena combat that started out. Now, the character I'm playing is a doctor. He has no combat skills whatsoever. And in Starfinder, when I say no combat skills, his chance of hitting is less than 40% or something ridiculous. He really has no chance of being involved in combat from a useful damage dealing perspective. That doesn't mean to say that he doesn't get involved. The GM creates situations where you can and can't be involved. So you've got to look out for those. But you've also got to look for opportunities. So I think that a lot of it is the player trying to find things for their own character to do. I think there's a big onus on the player to do that. I also think that what is important is for you to then say, okay, well, it's not just a gladiator arena where it's two people fighting each other. It's not just six people fighting each other, because I think that would be incredibly boring. I think it's about, okay, the first person to score 3 hits, or the first group to get the other group out of a ring or out of a space or out of pick a thing. That is the group that will win. So that is how I would approach that. I would look at it from that perspective as, okay, what can you add in? Now, when you look at a ranked system of gladiatorial combat, the first ranks are usually the ones that are the easiest. They're the warm-up matches to get the crowds excited. They're not particularly vicious, or they're not expected to be particularly vicious or dangerous. They are what they are. Nothing stops you, absolutely nothing stops you from emulating that to a degree. But maybe the combats are not just fighting combats. Maybe the combats are, okay, in this one, the first match, you are just facing against a large creature. And that creature is just a hack and slash. It's just to get the players used to the format of how things work. It's just a violent sort of bout. The second one might be a gladiatorial combat where the gladiators are both locked, or all of the gladiators are locked inside a room that's slowly shrinking. And whilst avoiding each other, they have to figure out a puzzle that you've put together, or they have to solve a mechanic, or use their opponents, trick their opponents into moving into a specific location, which will cause something to happen. So there are options available to you in terms of not just thinking of Spartacus or Gladiator the film, where it's just combat after combat after combat. I would also look at changing it up, where sometimes the correct solution is to potentially lose. See if that's an option. If you really want to have gladiatorial combat, then sure, go ahead, add it in. Don't hesitate. What I mean to say is that you could quite possibly say, okay, well, if the players win this, they don't actually win this. They come out of the arena and there's more to it. So the combat sequence actually happens out of the arena, not in the arena. Some matches, I would say you can describe them rather than have to fight through them. So I would have the first match. If you want to have like 6 tiers, I would then say, okay, I want everybody to roll a constitution saving throw, or whatever the case might be. Okay, those of you who pass, you don't take any damage. Those of you who fail, you take damage, but you take, a D10 damage or a D12 or whatever the level is or whatever the system is that you're using. And I would describe narratively, for the next 3 days, you slog it out on the battlefield, fighting and doing this. You can't leave the arena, so you can't go and buy equipment. Shut up, you can't go shopping. This is what's happened for the next 3 days. Now you're at the second tier of fighting, and you have to face against the Goliath, or however you want to describe it. So I would look at doing it that way as well, where it's you can narrate through every single combat. You don't have to fight through every single combat. Okay, next question, and we're doing questions while I do maps. Basically, that's today's format. If you have just joined us, we're not doing creative writing today. We're not looking at YouTube videos. We are just answering questions and building maps using Dungeon Fog as we go. Let's see. Question here from Kirby Logic. What non-combat encounters would you throw at a small party to try to rush up a wizard's tower? I don't want them to be slowed down for too long, but simply climbing the stairs is boring. Yeah, absolutely. And I see some people suggesting, throwing a trap. Traps are remarkable things. Either they are a complete waste of time and they're a non-event, or the thief just goes forward and detects traps and solves the trap because they've got such a high skill. Or they become a game-stoppingly painful moment where one of the players decides they are going to solve this puzzle or the trap, and they don't leave for days, very much derailing your process, which is what you want to avoid. As you have indicated, you don't want to spend days whilst they try and just climb up a set of stairs. So I've got two immediate options for you. One I've used in my private game, which I run on Sundays for some very good friends of mine in Canada, and the advice, or the scenario that they had, they were in a dungeon. They are in a dungeon, I should say. And they detected the very first trap. Now, it wasn't meant to be difficult for them to detect. It was meant to be fairly simple, as a matter of fact. And that's exactly how it played out. It was simple for them to detect. A giant, demonic, slug-like creature had placed its mouth over the door. And so anyone walking in just walked inside the mouth of the slug-like creature. They very easily detected it. I didn't want them to die and get consumed by said slug-like creature, so I made sure that it was easy for them to find. They found it, and then they were wary, because now suddenly every door was potentially trapped. Again, as with you, I didn't want it to slow down, so I said, okay, the traps that they find, there will be some traps, but most of it, they will just see them and be able to disarm them. So they're aware that traps are there. It does add some flavor to it. Then I had a trap which contained creatures that only had 1 hit point. So the moment you hit them, they die. They're called minions in 4th edition Dungeons and Dragons. I absolutely adored them. And so we had a whole bunch of minions that were basically the trap. They flew out, they attacked the party, they did all sorts of crazy maneuvers and that sort of thing. It didn't slow them down too much. It made the party aware. But the sense that they were potential traps was much more entertaining and much more engaging than the fact that there were actual traps. So you can certainly look at it like that. As you say rightly, do not try and have 50,000 encounters. It gets very boring very, very quickly, and you don't want to pepper too many traps around either, because for that exact same reason. So that's my advice there on that. Next question that I see. Omega 3 Anubis, how do you feel about players with more extensive backgrounds receiving mechanical distinctions, advantages or disadvantages, than players who provide more cookie cutter histories? Cookie cutter histories are inevitable. It happens for a whole lot of reasons. There's a reason why I did that entire video series on how to try and avoid that, because it is, as a game master, painful when you get that kind of situation, but it is going to happen. So you just have to roll with the punches. As for giving characters who have got better backstories, as for giving them an advantage of some kind, I would be wary of that, because it can start to look as if it's favoritism. Oh, you always give Mandy extra experience points or extra this because she writes so nicely, and I can't write nicely, and my characters have just got, their parents died and he decided to go adventuring. So I wouldn't advise that necessarily. What I would advise is that you can give that player more responsibility, because assumedly, they've spent more time creating their character backstory, they are more invested in the game, or at least they're more interested in the story component of the game, which if that is how your game is running, then that makes perfect sense to focus on that and give them some kind of advantage there. In Ghosts of Saltmarsh, again, I keep going back to Ghosts of Saltmarsh, but it's a good reference because you'll be able to watch it next week. In Ghosts of Saltmarsh, I gave the one character a ship. So Captain Victor Salt has a ship, the Second Chance. And it's their ship. If they wanted to, they could kick off all of the other PCs and run with it. I have the advantage of having 5 players who have written pages of backstories. Pages and pages of backstories. Which, by the way, you will actually be able to access if you go to World Anvil, worldanvil.com. There's a new section called Heroes, which has just come out, which is basically like, and this makes it sound too simple, but it's a Facebook for characters. Now, it sounds crazy, but at the same time, you can go and have a look at their characters and watch their characters post after each episode going, oh my god, I nearly died, but this happened and that happened. It's a little bit of a metagame kind of space, but at the same time, for the player, it gives them a space to creatively explore their character and to think about their character motivations, which makes me, as a game master, very, very excited. Because if that is something that is being, if that is what is being given and encouraged to happen, well, that means better games for all of us. So yeah, again, that makes me that makes me super happy. I think I'm done with the map. I think I'm done. No, I'm not done. I need the rope bridge thing. All right, so that's my question. That's my answer there. Where are we now? Next question is Shiriana. This is Dungeon Fog. It certainly is awesome if you are still watching, so have a look at that. Waldo Dune says, hello, I'm new to DMing. It's awesome to hear, and I'm generally a goofy person. I was wondering what a good relationship of goofy and wholesome stuff to serious stuff would be. Waldo, if you've ever watched any of the games I've ever run, I myself would consider myself to not be a very serious GM. I like humor. I like to make people laugh. I like to laugh during my games. At the same time, I also realize that a narrative is all about good balance. And when you watch a comedy movie or a play and it's not funny, you go, well, why is this play not funny? Either it's trying too hard to be funny, which is terrible, or it doesn't give you enough opportunity to realize that there are moments of fun and there are moments of seriousness. So I always try and balance it out. If there is lots of laughter going on, if things are very funny and everyone's laughing and that sort of thing, perfectly fine. And then the ship starts to sink, and then someone fires a weapon at the players, or something happens. I imagine in my mind a series of waves. And this is not just because of Ghosts of Saltmarsh. A series of waves. On the upward rise is where we're having fun and the heroes are being heroic and they're running across bullets and they're dodging cars and they're just being all awesome and laughing, and the bad guys are fumbling and dropping their weapons and losing their car keys and all those kinds of things. And then on the downward curve, we then have a very serious moment where they discover that although all of this chaos has been happening, the little girl that they were trying to rescue has actually now gone missing. So what you're doing is you're creating emotional troughs and peaks. So it's fun in games, emotions are high, everyone's having fun, and then you drop them down. Why do you drop them down? Why do you want to have a downer in your game? You drop them down so that when they then go back up into that next peak where things are fun again, and there's the girl, she's in a helicopter. Right, we've got a helicopter chase, and we're busy dodging seagulls that are flying past, and we're flying through clouds, and we're losing them, and then we're finding them and we're losing them. And then we find the little girl, and we grab her, and we get her onto the helicopter, and everything is happy. We're at a peak. We're at a peak. What do we do now? We can't go to another peak because the characters have achieved their goal. To go to another peak becomes very difficult. What now? She offers marriage to the characters and they live happily ever after? That's not great. So our only alternative is then to go to a downer. or to maintain. And we can't maintain that either. We need to have these moments where we stop and reflect. So the little girl is on the helicopter and everyone's awesome, and the bad guy helicopter explodes against a cliff and everyone's like, yay! And then the little girl's head splits open in half and she eats one of the player characters. Woohoo! Straight down on that roller coaster into a low where it's like, what? This is not what we were expecting. It's a complete reversal of the happiness space into a terrified space, because now they're contained within a little helicopter flying above the city with this monster girl thing that's now trying to eat them. It's a dramatic moment. There's no one laughing. There's just terror as this thing is happening. They kill the little girl. They find a business card that is, this thing was made by so-and-so. It starts them on a mystery, which is still in the lower trough. The mystery starts to get interesting, though, because now they're starting to chase someone. They're trying to put the pieces together. So we're on a slight rise again. We can go down into another trough when they find a dead end, but then they find a solution to the dead end, so then they rise up again. So it's about trying to think of rises and of peaks and troughs, and it helps me as a storyteller as well, because I'm sitting there and my party is having too much fun. I go, okay, this is wonderful, but it's not sustainable. So I need to then bring in a moment of sadness. How do I do that? Where can I take the story? What twist can I give it? So it really helps me in terms of creating my stories to keep that in mind. So it's a very good question to ask, Waldo. Very, very good question to ask. Kate Anshan says, hello, Kate. We see you in the stream a lot. I'm very glad to see you here again. How do you make sure different countries' cultures still feel coherent while also unique? I'm trying to flesh out my world, but I want to make sure that it feels like a world. Kate Anshan, I would direct you to my Campaign Creators series. It was launched at the beginning of the year. We're creating a complete campaign from beginning to end, where we're building the world, we're building the cultures in that world. I specifically have a few videos in there where we talk about creating cultures and how to draw from real world cultures and make them your own, and how to flesh them out and enhance them so that they are cool, but they're not overbearing and they're not so weird and they're not so different that the players have this massive learning curve that they have to try and go through to get there. To understand what this whole space is like. So there we go. White Tiger 225. Any way to make interesting landmarks interesting to players? For example, the sword the size of a village, rusted and lying in a swathe of ancient destroyed forest. It's cool in picture, but what can I do to make them remember it? White Tiger 225. I wouldn't try and make it memorable until the players come back to that forest and you've already told them about that thing. So let me backtrack just a little bit. Let me go back a bit. So you've got this gigantic sword, really cool visual, that has been abandoned in a destroyed forest or a ruined forest or whatever it might be. Great stuff. The players are walking down the road and you describe in the distance, you see this magnificently rusted and ruined but huge hilt of a sword sticking out of the remains of the dead forest. It's unmoving, but it has to stand well over 200 foot into the air. That's it. Maybe you can describe that you can see crows circling around the top of the hilt, but the blade is buried deep into the forest and you can't see it from the road. If the players don't do anything, that is gold for you as the game master. The players carry on, oh yeah, that's nice, we're going to the village. We're going shopping. Okay, you're going shopping and you're going to the village. You have ignored my gigantic thing in the forest. You've now seeded that there is a giant sword in the forest. So later on, when your players now want to go exploring in the forest, you've given them some other adventure that takes them to the forest. When you refer to that sword again, your players are going to go, oh yeah, we can't remember that sword. We didn't look at it when we were going past it, but we're here now. It entrenches in their mind that the world is a living space and that there are things happening outside of it that they are not privy to, as happens in the real world. When they then come across something that they have already come across before but dismissed, if they dismiss it again and they go, oh yeah, we're not interested in that giant sword, you know the type of players that you're now dealing with. They're not interested in the giant MacGuffins that you're trying to force into their space. They are interested in the more intimate, the NPC stories or whatever it is that they're looking for. But by having mentioned it before, when you mention it again, it just makes the world feel richer. It makes the world feel stronger as a result. So definitely something to be looked forward to, not something to be shied away from. So yeah, bear that in mind. Bear that in mind. This is my favorite part where we're doing the lighting in Dungeon Fog. You can reduce, you can't see it. Let me just try and drag that over a little bit. In Dungeon Fog, you can reduce the stage light, so you can make the stage black if you want to, or you can make it a little bit darker, and you can reduce the light in the room, so all the lights, all the torches that I've been putting up, you can see glow and give you that nice sort of effect. So I usually drop it down to about 75%. Come here. The grid I'm not worried about. I'm going to be taking this out of Dungeon Fog anyway. Dungeon Fog I use for designing the map. This is the basement level, by the way. So the basement level is here. We have this fighting pit arena, which I think is quite fun. I think taverns usually, especially pirate-like taverns, oh, we got a giant octopus in, it's going to fight against, Mad Marmaduke, the one-legged, however, whatever that might work. This is not the entire tavern, by the way. The entire tavern consists of the ground floor, which I can delete geography now, as a matter of fact. The ground floor, we then go to the ground floor. Oh, I haven't finished the ground floor. It's looking kind of pretty at the moment. We've got a little tower. This is the lighthouse that sits out in the bay. We've got the bay happening. These are all secret props. Don't talk about them. Just ignore them for now. This is the actual bulk of the tavern itself. Let me zoom in here because I have to finish doing the thing that I like to do the most. So we've got all of these different layers and things. It's not muddy track outside. That was just the texture that I chose for the ground. I think... No, muddy track is actually pretty good. I'm going to change my tools up now. This is something that I really... I can do this all day. When you paint in grass or whatever you're using. I think I'm going to go with wild patches of short grass. I don't want to change its color too much. Let's see, maybe I'll do a bit darker. Okay, there we go. We're going to paint. I'm going to take my opacity up a little bit. Softness is going to go up a little bit. And we're going to paint the grass. Grass is going to grow around here. The mud patch, I assume, is as people walk in, they're going to destroy the mud. They will cause all sorts of grief to happen as they're walking in, and they're not going to loiter around the side of the tavern here. I quite like that grass, actually. Okay, so we put in some grass over there. Then I need some grass up here because I see there's some weirdness happening there. I'm sure that will fix itself. Okay, maybe let's change its thickness up a little bit. Maybe there's some grass that will grow around the front here. Oh, let me get in there. There's some grass that's just going to grow there, simply because you'll walk up the steps. Probably not. You'll probably just walk straight onto the decking and straight in. But I'm optimistic. That you won't. Right, let's get some dirt going. This is my other favorite part, is now that we have created our tavern, earthy soil I think is pretty good. Now we've created our tavern. This decking looks very clean to me for something that's outside, so I'm going to dirty that up by adding in the stuff that sits over it. I'm going to use the same dirt out here actually, because then that will account for why the same brown is everywhere, and I'm going to paint over all of this. So we get this really layered kind of effect happening. And I mean, you can spend as much time or as little time as you want doing this. Yeah, and this leads us into the stable yard. I've done a whole bunch of tutorial videos, by the way, on what you need to have in stables and taverns and things. Mostly taverns have stabling for the horses. Then we've got dirt that gets tracked into the tavern itself by all of the tavern users because they're just filthy sailors. We all know what sailors do. They sail on the ocean. So I'm going to dusty this up a little bit. here. I was quite happy with the curve because when I build these things, I try and tell stories at the same time. If you've ever watched some of my videos, and the story that I came up with for this empty nest is that it used to be just part of the lighthouse operations. It was just stock standard. Empty. So it wasn't a tavern. It was a lookout point, and there would have been a bridge that extended out here to the actual lighthouse itself, that's the backstory I came up with for the tavern. Then, as Saltwater, because in the book Saltwater is this sleepy little forgotten about bay, as Saltwater kind of got less and less prominent and more forgotten about, they no longer needed it as a lighthouse, so then it was abandoned. The main body was sold off. The lighthouse still operates, but the main body was then just released to whomever wanted it. And I see that what I have forgotten to put in here is the very thing that I like to add, which is lighting. So I'm going to be using lanterns here. Let's go to some more questions. I realize I've been talking too much and to myself. Oh dear, oh dear, oh dear. So questions. Dracone says, how do you make the defenses of a community feel more distinct based upon the environment around the city, hamlet, or town? Yes. Okay, so there we go. How do you make the defenses of a community feel more based around the environment? Okay, so it's a good question. I like these kind of questions. It allows one to look to history. I did not know this, but Michelangelo, the famous artist Michelangelo, or the famous Ninja Turtle, depending on your particular education, Michelangelo was employed by his hometown of Florence. He was based in Florence. He was employed by Florence to design the defenses of the city of Florence by the Medici family. Florence was about to be invaded, and they didn't like that idea. They wanted to remain independent. This was during all of the shenanigans that were going on in Italy at the time. And what he did was he designed these sort of crenellations and things to protect against cannons. Cannons were starting to become the major game changer, if you will, of warfare at the time. So he designed all these different defenses and things based on the fact that they needed to protect against specific types of weapon attack and the like. Now, what does that have to do with city defenses? City defenses, I think, need to be very much around the idea of what does the local warfare look like. So in Michelangelo's case, the warfare was, it's cannons and dangerous things like that. Okay, we need to build specifically for that. If I look at the Zulu people of Southern Africa, their defenses were interlocking trees. They were little trees. We need a word, saplings, I suppose. There's a particular type of sapling that has lots of thorns on it, part of the acacia tree family, and they would take these saplings, these young trees, and they would interweave them into a fence. It was not a transparent, it was not a solid fence. You could see through it, but basically you could see movement and shapes and the like. The reason why was because Zulu warfare at the time, you didn't necessarily attack the village. You arrived chanting your war songs, and then you challenged the city to a duel. And the villagers. And their villagers would come out, and you would all fight, and it was all dramatic and that sort of thing. But the village itself generally wasn't burnt down because they were all made out of grass or wood, and it was really easy just to rebuild them. So it was a bit of a waste of time if you were going to do that. So they didn't generally do that. So there is an example of, well, sure, they don't need anything more than what they're getting because their combat just never gets more than that. So I'd think about it from that perspective. If they are mainly in the swamp and there's lots of swamp creatures that attack, stilts was another type of defense. Papua New Guinea used to build their houses on stilts because of other cannibals who apparently didn't have axes to chop down the stilts. That was always something that made me question the thinking, the methodology there in terms of their defenses. But yes, I would look to what are the social pressures, or what are the military pressures that are upon the culture when deciding whether they have a defense or not. Some villages just didn't have walls. They didn't need them. They capitulated with any enemy who came along, or they knew that they did not have enough power to defeat anyone who came along, and so they just accepted their fate. That is entirely an option for you to explore. Yeah, so that's my thinking on city defenses, and I think I'm done there. Did I put a lantern in here? No, I didn't. Although the wall has collapsed slightly here. As you can see, I had fun with the starfish. This pack is coming out next week, by the way, if you have got Dungeon Fog. So there we are. So many cool things going on. Now, if you look at this map, I've got Victorian stuff, I've got mining stuff, I've got fantasy stuff, I don't think I've got anything from the modern set in here. I've got the flavor stuff. They came up with food stuffs recently, so you can set up little knives and forks and meat, and you really can go overboard. Excuse the pun, but yes, it's a lot of fun, I have to admit. I'm going to put in some lights here. I thought, this little deck, which is described in the Ghost of Saltmarsh, there's a little deck that stretches out into the bay. I was like, oh, that's pretty cool. I would happily sit out there, not in bad weather, obviously. So there we are. Next question, because I keep forgetting. Magnus Dead said, how do you make ship battles exciting, unpredictable? Magnus, you must have missed the beginning of the stream. How do you make them exciting and unpredictable? In my case, I write a book. I have written a supplemental book on the Ghost of Saltmarsh base, which is using the Dungeons and Dragons ship combat base. I have changed things up, added in a few little different mechanics that they don't have. I've added things like ships now having a charisma score. If you don't know Dungeons and Dragons, the ships didn't have a charisma score, but they had a constitution, a strength, and a dexterity score. I've now given them a charisma score. I've given them other bits and bobs, as well as then just created about 28 different types of ships, so that ship combat is a lot more interesting from that perspective. We've got mechanics for how ships can close the distance between each other a lot faster. So this is going to be available in a little while. I'm still busy writing it and testing it. So there are some options there. In terms of making ship combat unpredictable, it's about trying to determine what is the purpose of the ship combat in the first place. Are you having ship combat because you feel that you should have ship combat now, and so that is a thing that you are doing? Or why are you having ship combat? If it is to capture the PCs, make it descriptive, give them some chances to succeed, but ultimately know that they're going to fail. If it's because it's what we expect because they're out on the ocean, then absolutely a different story entirely, and you can explore your options there. Generally speaking, though, and I'll tell you this right away, I immediately threw out the door the idea of, well, a ship is traveling at 60 feet around and you are 2,500 feet away from each other, so for the next 10 rounds the two ships are just sailing at each other, and oh, you're now going 65 feet, so they're actually getting further. That's pathetically boring, and it is not something that I would ever use anyway. I would immediately change that ruling up and say, okay, well, actually, there's a different mechanic at play here, and so those are the mechanics that I put into that rule system. So there you are. So that's how I would answer that. Josh Burl, another question: is there a class pairing in a party that you personally do not enjoy running? I hate monks. I absolutely hate monks when they are paired with anything else. I hate monks. It's just a class that I have never liked. To me, they have not added anything into the game. They have just detracted from the other classes. Personally, there were suggestions that they get changed to martial artist. Sure, but I still feel that their skills overlap with what is already existing. I would far rather have seen the monk become a fighter subclass or a fighter extension rather than the route that they took. That's just me personally. As for pairings, no, I think all pairings work very well. The one pairing I do particularly hate, simply because oftentimes it's a reflection of the players, not a reflection of the game, is the paladin rogue combination, where the rogue is being rogue stupid and all that usual nonsense that goes with rogues now trying to pickpocket everybody. Yeah, so that's my take on that. Is that would be the only pairing that I don't look forward to when I see it, because invariably it's going to lead to conflict and to issues that are they're just going to slow the game down. They really are. So I suppose that would be my answer to that question. Next question. I'd like to know how to drop hints for the players. This is from the Yognaut64. I'd like to know how to drop hints for the players when they are straying from what I have prepared, or that they are missing out on stuff, without being too controlling. The Yognaut64, I was talking to, as a matter of fact, I was talking to Till last night. He's the creator of Dungeon Fog, and we were talking about the very first adventure in Ghosts of Saltmarsh, which, there's no spoiler here. The first adventure in Ghosts of Saltmarsh was written in 1985 or 86, I think, and so there's nothing surprising that I'm about to tell you. The Ghosts of Saltmarsh was written in the 80s when dungeon players were very methodical, very focused on role playing. These adventurers who would go into dungeons and would all carry. I mean, the joke was, have you got a 10-foot pole? No? Oh, well, then you're not a professional adventurer. Why a 10-foot pole? Because that's how you detect for traps, as you walk around prodding the ground with a 10-foot pole, so that you don't get caught unawares. And yes, sure. What it meant is that the Ghost of Saltmarsh dungeon that you encounter in Sinister Secrets of Saltmarsh is incredibly sneaky. It is written for players who were checking every wall, every door, every corner for traps, for information, for loot. And there is a very real risk that the players, modern day players, and I say that simply because it's how the game has evolved, but modern day players are going to walk into that space, go, cool mansion, cool encounters, and leave, and we're going to be sitting there going, but there's a whole other section which you don't know about. They've got secret rooms within secret rooms, which I know for some of you are like, nah, okay, so do I. But a lot of players, that is mind blown. But we found the secret room. Yes, and there's another one on behind that. What? No way! That's insane. It happens, trust me. So Till and I were talking last night because he's busy doing the map, and he's like, well, how can we make it a bit more obvious? How can we let them do this? And I was saying, it's a real point. Another real point is they might not even go to the mansion in the first place. There isn't a solid reason for the players to go. Okay, now what do we do? Not to worry. We're going to not rewrite, we're going to add to the adventure. The owner of this tavern, by the way, oh, look at that lighthouse. Had so much fun designing this lighthouse. Let's just dirty up the floor quickly. They can go to the inn, and he will prompt them in a certain direction. They can go wherever they like, and they'll get prompted to go there. If players are missing stuff, that's not your problem. That's not your fault. It's not a reflection upon you as the game master. They've just missed it. And yes, you've planned all this stuff, like this entire space that I have been drawing here. They may never come down here, but that's okay, because when I play the game again, because I assume I will be playing this game for until I die, when another group of players comes down here, hey, guess what? They might discover this space, and then great. None of this effort is wasted, and they can come and play in this thing and just have super fun whilst playing in it, and I don't have to worry. I don't have to feel bad about them missing stuff. It's gonna happen. Just let it happen. Just let it happen. Where are my? I need to go to brushes. This is just a bit too dark. Where's the big one? That's this one. This is a bit too dark, so I'm just going to lighten that up so it's not so obvious. Maybe these ones too. Yeah, so there we go. Dropping hints and stuff. Give them what they need and then don't go any further. I have a policy. Once they walk into a room, they're on their own. If they're in that room and they don't ask questions, that's not my... It's not my space to say, well, do you check the walls for traps? Nope, nope, nope. If they don't check, they don't check. Maybe I'm too I don't know, evil. That's me. That's me. Right, a lot of things coming through. Eberly, there we go. Eberly, Josh Eberly, there we go. 2 monks, least favorite combo. No, actually, if it was 2 monks, I would say, right, you start your meditation. Go and play that game on your own. Come back in 10 years when you've found enlightenment. Yeah, so there we go. Next question, Caleb Miller. Do you have any favorite magic items or specific ones you have planned for Ghosts of Saltmarsh? Favorite magic items? Yes, I do. My favorite magic item at the moment is the one that the players are going to encounter in episode 1, which is the big bad of the entire series, the Nemesis. They are going to encounter that Nemesis. In episode 1, very first act, they are encountering the Nemesis. I need them to see that Nemesis straight away, and yeah, they're gonna see him. He's got a magical item. It's a sailing ship. It's a warship that is held together by an undead kraken. That is his big thing. I think it's going to be dramatic. I think it's going to be fun. It's not a spoiler. It is on my YouTube channel already. I've been talking about how I've been planning for Ghosts of Saltmarsh, so that's in there. Otherwise, you know, what I'm also super excited about is having taken Ghosts of Saltmarsh. When Wizards of the Coast and I were talking about it, and they were saying, okay, we want you to run the stream, I was like, okay, well, how much do I have to stick to Ghosts of Saltmarsh versus just play Dungeons and Dragons using Ghosts of Saltmarsh as flavoring? And their emphatic answer, without a shadow of a doubt, is Ghosts of Saltmarsh is a toolkit. It is a toolbox that allows you as the game master to dip into it and pull out what you like. It's not... It can be set in one of the Dungeons and Dragons settings like Greyhawk or Eberron or whatever. But it is designed to inspire you as the game master to run a more nautical-esque type of game. And that's exactly what I did. So in the book, they've got a whole lot of different types of sailing ships and things. They did not have enough for me personally. I wanted more. So I have been writing. I've got about 25 to 30 different types of ships that are there, and each one of them I've said, okay, well, what would a dwarvish ship look like in the context of magic and within the framework of what Dungeons and Dragons has established already? So it's been that for me has been the most entertaining part about designing these ships is how would the gnomes travel across the ocean? How would merfolk? What would a merfolk ship look like? And you go, well, why would the merfolk have ships? They don't need them, do they? Yes, they do. They have exactly the same requirements as we have on land. They have 20 tons of dried seahorse or seahorse meat to transfer from one city to the other. They're not going to put it in backpacks and swim across the ocean. They're going to have massive ships that they load it into, and those ships are going to work in a certain way. How do I give those ships flavoring and make them feel as if they make sense for the environment, but also make sure that they are fitting within the rules that have been established already? So that's been a lot of fun is doing that. I suppose that I think that answers your question. Clearly the fish dagger. Yeah, Michael Rourke. Yes, that fish dagger. I loved my fish dagger. I like my magical items to be different. Diablo Bob. Any plans for encounters with a ghost ship, abandoned ship? Well, Ghosts of Saltmarsh did kind of imply. Okay, I'm just checking this map to make sure that I'm absolutely happy with it. I am absolutely happy with it. I am done. I will hit that save button. Yay! I'm not. Maybe I should try and export it here. I think I will. Yeah. So abandoned ships, ghost ships. The module itself, the adventure book, has got lots of rules in there for exactly that, handling those things. And I've just realized I could turn this. No, I can't. They've got lots of rules for all of those kinds of things, and there are encounters. So yes, definitely there will be a ghost ship, an abandoned ship without a doubt. There's actually Mordenkainen's abandoned ship if you wanted to include more of the world lore from existing Dungeons and Dragons. Kate Anshan, another question from Kate. How do you feel about incorporating magic into stuff like the economy and delivery systems of the world? Like shopkeeping, using magic to send adventurers custom orders. I think Amazon has already started looking into that. Amazon, they did their drone delivery thing. They did door-to-door. They did now within 24-hour delivery. They're doing fresh fruit. I think magic is next on their cards, where they just teleport the stuff straight into your home and then you pay for it later. So absolutely. Magic is a game changer when it comes to everything, and I don't know if we explore it enough in our current role-playing systems. I don't think we do, to be perfectly honest with you. I think that we can push it further, but it starts to warp our little minds when we get there. I have had, I don't know how many conversations with people saying, well, should it be this or should it be that, or how would this affect, or how would that affect? Definitely something to think about. I don't see why you shouldn't cogitate. Sorry, something happened on. Oh, there we go. I don't see why you shouldn't include something like that in your world. Think about the implications. Think about what it means for the players as well. Does that mean that they are easily going to be able to access things? What are the implications? That's definitely what I would look at there. What are the implications? With Ghosts of Saltmarsh, what are the implications of magic? Huge implications of magic. And we even saw that. Matthew Mercer's game, I keep going back to it, but I think a lot of you guys will watch that. The entire ship encounter, he's busy running it, and he's trying to get the ships to attack each other, and they're just not, and they're not. And the wizard goes, I cast Control Water, which creates a wave, which has a 20% chance of sinking a ship. Because when they created the spell, they didn't have ship combat rules, so they didn't think about it too much. So he rolls, and his entire ship encounter is destroyed because the ship is sunk. It happens. Yes, he had maps probably built for those ships. Yes, most likely. It fell apart. That's just the risk that one runs. So I don't even know how I got onto that topic. Sorry, I'm rambling because Dungeon Fog was exporting stuff and my brain is all over the place. Yes, so incorporate magic. Yes, do so. Without a doubt. Ryan Iron Wolf says elf ships, you can see them as being shells, conch-like shells with runes and gold. Well, I have a question for you. Where did they get the gold from, and how do they liquefy the gold and pour it onto the ships in the first place? Is it gold leaf, in which case do they buy that from the surface? Is that what the exchange is? Do they have furnaces? I was watching Aquaman the other day, or Aquaman, however you want to pronounce it. That whole movie just irritated me from start to finish, probably because I'm planning for Ghosts of Saltmarsh. And a lot of it was like, well, how the hell did they manufacture that underwater? Anyway, something to think about. Question, how do you decide, this is from It's Aristar, how do you decide which players or friends to approve for your campaigns to play in? Interesting. I have done a video, what to look for in players, where you go about literally answering that question. What do you look like? What do you look like? What do you look for? It's not what do you look like. It's like, you look like you should be a role player. You can join my table. No. What to look for. And what do you look for? It's a good question. You look for things like compatibility in terms of style. Are you more narrative? Are you more rules heavy? Are you someone who is going to write me a 12-page biography, or not even write a background for your character? Do you like this? Do you like that? If I'm running a Star Wars game, will you still participate? If I'm running this game, will you still do that? There is no secret here. If you look at Sable Dice that I'm part of, I was the GM, now I'm a player. I really enjoy playing with those guys because none of us care about the rules. None of us care about the rules. We care about the story and we care about having fun. When the rules are tried to be imposed upon us, as I'm quite happy to say you can see in this week's episode of Save or Dice, the whole thing falls apart, and everybody, just everybody, got very, not unhappy, but sullen, and it's like, why are these rules doing this to our story? So there is a bunch of people that you find and that you click with because they're in the same space. So I always look for that first. Are you a mechanics man or woman or person? No. Great. Come to my table. You are. You know what? You're not going to have fun at my table because I bend the rules all the time. So yeah, I look for that. That's what I look for. Definitely what I look for. The next question, Tommy Dude, I believe you're one of our moderators on the Discord. How do you keep being awesome, guy? Oh, I've already given you this month's Patreon rewards. You don't need to be... Anyway. How do you keep being awesome? Well, yeah, no. It's that awesome juice that I drink every day. It's called coffee. Although, to be perfectly honest with you, I hate real coffee. I'm an instant powder kind of person, and it's got to be the cheapest powder you can, which means it's not even coffee, it's chicory. So I think that's how it works. Maybe? I don't know. I don't know. Anyway, so yeah, that's that. I don't see any other questions there. Hey guys, can't stay up super late for the chat, but thanks for the great content. Kurtle Myrtle, thank you for being part of the show. I assume you're somewhere in Europe, in which case it is definitely super late. Thank you for being part of it and for participating. So there we go. Another question from Eric. How would you engage in a setting, bait and switch? Starting in a medieval world, for instance, tracking down some magic only to discover the MacGuffin is actually Tex and oops, sci-fi. Wow. Interesting. That is a... Well, okay. Sure. That, I think, would work fairly well. I'm trying to think of a game system that would allow you to do that seamlessly. Savage Worlds, I think, comes to mind. I'm not entirely convinced, but maybe where you could shift from one to the other. Again, that shift is perfectly fine provided you've set it up throughout the entire thing. That what appears to be magic, the mage that they encounter, the strange mage from a race they've never seen, claps their hands and light suddenly illuminates. The players can't detect a magic spell. I would heavily make sure that that is there to help facilitate that transition. I would also make sure your players are prepared for that. One of the games that I will never forget, I ran it many years ago. My intention was always to have the players become undead and have to find a way to become human again or to become living again. That was the campaign arc that I had planned upon. And so we played the game. They were fighting lots of undead. NPCs were turning into undead all around them. They were encountering undead who were still sentient, who were still aware, who were not evil. I was building it as much as I could. And then when the players became undead, sadly, the one player who I should not have been playing with for as long as I did, that player stood up and left the game because they did not like their character becoming undead. It was not something that they wanted to roleplay. the rest of the players were quite keen to explore this idea because it was a twist. You have to be careful that your players are ready for something like that. You don't want to ask them, hey guys, so what happens if the game suddenly became sci-fi? That you've taken away the surprise. But I would casually say, so I'm thinking, I was watching this show the other day. I forget what it was. It was, one of those great GM videos. Blah. And in it, they had this situation where they were playing in a Victorian game, and suddenly the whole thing became medieval. They got transported back in time or into the future. What do you guys think about that? And if they all go, oh God, it sucks, warning, don't do what you're about to do. So maybe that's something to bear in mind. Or to think about. Again, Mr. Michael Rourke says, how do you keep a shopping heavy session engaging for more action orientated players? Michael, there is a whole video that I have done on that, shopping and how to make it interesting. The shopping is always going to happen. There's very seldom that you can just get away from it. You can avoid it. It is going to be a thing that it happens. Very short answer. For those that are more action orientated, let them find encounters in the shopping space. Let them see a thief stealing something from someone and have a chase sequence. Let them get accosted by the guards. Let them get accosted by thieves. Let them discover that there's something in the market trying to eat them or trying to assassinate them or trying to follow them. So turn the market into an encounter space where it is quite literally a little mini adventure. Plan it as a mini adventure. Oh, they're going shopping? Right. I've got 6 little things happening within this market that they can come across if they go to the blacksmith, if they go here, if they go there. So I would look at it from that perspective. Definitely look at it from that perspective. Any other questions? I don't think so. I am going to actually say we are nearly at the end of our time. 4 minutes anyway. The streams are only 2 hours long. Just to clarify, there are no streams on Monday nights anymore. That was when I was running Broken World Chronicles. Now that I'm running Ghosts of Saltmarsh, that's on Saturday night. So live streams Friday night, 6 p.m. Pacific time. Ghosts of Saltmarsh, 1 p.m. Pacific time. So that makes it 8 p.m. GMT for Europe. We specifically asked WotC, Wizard of the Coast, can we please run it when Europe can watch it and the US can watch it at the same time without anyone having to wake up at 3 in the morning. What I didn't realize was that in order to hit those time zones, the GM and one of my players from Australia, we have to wake up at 3 a.m. in the morning to run the game so that everybody else in the world doesn't have to. So, yes, that's very much a case of good idea, bad idea. I'm not sure. Right, last question. Diablo Bob says, have you seen the Golden Cloud building in Tokyo, the Asahi building? Golden Cloud is not the word I would use to describe the shape of that statue. Yes, that is not the way I would describe that statue. But yes, I have seen it. I wonder why you asked me that question. Are you currently on top of it with a sniper rifle? It's fine. I'm 20 kilometers away from it. There we are. White Tiger, last question. Keep on keeping on. You've helped me become a more confident and competent GM, and my players thank you. Well, thank you for that, White Tiger. And yes, I have some homework to do, and I will not forget to do it this time round. Hopefully, if they have reminded me in Discord, I will go and have a look at that. Blake Barn, how do you start an adventure? By just having your party walk into a town when the danger is outside of the town. Burn the town down, and then the danger is no longer outside. That is my long, short, and actual answer. If they are in the town and they don't want to go out of it, burn it down. Whatever is outside can burn it down, and that will certainly get their attention and get them into the game. So there we are. Until next time, I thank you all for watching the show, for participating in the show. If you're on YouTube, hit that like button. If you're on Twitch and you're part of Amazon Prime and you have a free subscription to a channel, that was the wrong face to beg for that subscription anyway. I hope you all have a fantastic weekend. Mine is filled with planning, plotting, and I've got a game tomorrow which is super exciting. We're getting towards the climax of the game. The one player has become the chosen one by the church to hunt down this massive demon. The demon happens to control the phylactery of a dragon, which the other player is trying to liberate, and they turn the demon to a frog with polymorph. Only now they don't know what to do with it because, of course, polymorph wears off, or if you kill the frog, the demon comes back with full hit points. So they're in a bit of a rock and a hard place because they don't have any spells left. They've used them all getting to the demon. So this session should be a lot of fun for me, and hopefully for them. And hopefully for you, you have games coming up, you have fun times happening. Hopefully I will see you again next week, Friday. I will be full of trepidation as it's the countdown to Ghosts of Saltmarsh. And yeah, so if you have questions, keep them for next week, and I will try and answer them as best I can. Until then, I wish you and yours the very happiest of gaming.